Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DevRel podcast, where we will weekly bring you the latest news in tech in DevRel. Today, I'm here with Deni. Hey, Deni, how are you?
Hey guys, super excited to be here and get started in our weekly series.
That's amazing. And what we have for today is very interesting. We're pretty excited. Deni, do you want to get started with our news for the week?
Absolutely. Before we jump right in, we just released our first edition of our guides for our community. So this week we are talking how to get into DevRel, and we compiled the best tips and tricks for how you can get started in this field. We're really confident that these tips are going to help you to jumpstart your career, learn from the best tips on how you can actually develop your personal branding and develop yourself in our field. So give it a read, and we are excited to listen to your feedback and what were your favorite takes on our first guide. Together with
Yeah,
that, go
I
ahead.
love this guy, Deni. Just bringing my thoughts on it. Honestly, guys, this field is very complex, and most of the times people just jump right into it without realizing like all the things that comes with it. And I love how we were able to put everything in this short doc where when you reach the end of it, you get a really good idea of what DevRel is really about. That is not usually brought up by people when talking about it. It's not just creating content. There's so much to it, and for sure, if you're thinking about getting into the space, you definitely need to give it a read and understand what's your role, what you're going to be doing, how to get companies to be interested in you, how to create a brand if you want to, and all that juicy stuff. Thank you, Dani,
One
for
thing
this.
that is very interesting from what you just mentioned is the path for people to actually get in our space, right? So usually that is very zigzaggy. I know that people often have different career paths or discover DevRel because they found someone on Twitter who's doing DevRel and they just find the term cool. I mean, DevRel is a very not so new as a field, but it has been getting very popular. Like you mentioned a while back in one of our spaces, it got very popular during COVID. So usually people who are developers, good in creating content for their own personal brand, get into DevRel because the companies assume they are good to create content for their communities, or people who are community managers or tech influencers get into DevRel because they already have that content expertise and companies assume that they are good enough to create technical content for their communities. What do you think is usually either an ideal path for someone to get into DevRel if someone was getting started today? Like, okay, I really find this field could be for me. This could be like a really good profession for me to work on. Like, what would be like an ideal trajectory for someone to actually dive into this and get started to prepare to be a DevRel?
Absolutely. I think just start with what you like. In this career, you can do so many different things. You can go deeply technically, you can go deeply into the community, into the experience, into the marketing. So there's really room to for you to be a great at one of these areas and be a great DevRel professional. And if you're like a very technical person, you want to get into the code, but you also want to help the developer experience of a certain tool. You like working a little bit with events and people. That's definitely a path that you can consider and just go deeply technically into a tool that you like. So yeah, first pick something that you like doing. If it's talking to people in communities, if it's hosting events, if it's recording videos, and start doing that. And maybe aim for something or some technology that you really want to work with and start putting content around that because that's a great way to get the attention of people in that field to start looking at you as a possibility to come and work for them as a veteran as well. It's a great way to get into it. You know?
I think usually with this zigzaggy field, it's very interesting how people get lost in the trenches of like, uh, here's what I need to do. I'm just gonna push a lot of content, participate of Twitter Spaces, and grow a community around me, even though I don't really have any intentional content being published for those people. So from my end and from my own trajectory, it was kind of like a zigzag as well. Like it was a definitely very long path for me to actually get started in this field. So I graduated in university as a computer science graduate. I never worked directly as a software engineer or anything like that. Because as soon as I graduated, I went to the US and started working with marketing. So I had to discover like how to market different small projects and side projects I had and build communities around them so I could actually get a user base and people actually giving feedback around the projects I was building. So I built a very fun fact here by a community focused on CrossFit. So I built this whole community and a platform to track people. I had 2 competitions going on every year with people from all over Latin America. And I had to learn how to market my platform, my community, and attract people to pay me to actually participate in those competitions. So I got a lot of experience producing content for that. And later down the road, when I moved to New York, I got a job at Reebok because of this expertise and the community I built around CrossFit.
I love it. And that's because you loved CrossFit, right? So you just picked something you liked, create a side project on that, like showcase your technical expertise. And then, okay, now how do I get users to start using the products? And this is exactly DevRel. If you think about it, like, it's how do I get people to start looking into it, finding it interesting, and having a good experience with it.
Don't you think that's why many companies see DevRels as part of the marketing team directly? Like, I talked to a few companies like over the past years, and they were like, we don't even need to have a marketing team because the DevRel can do everything, you know?
Yeah, the great question. I mean, there is quite a difference. If you think about putting a traditional marketing team into a developer tool, you're gonna get quite a bit in the ass because that's not how it really works for developers. You're not gonna, thrive with Facebook ads or, traditional marketing techniques and promoted posts. And once you try to do that, everybody will get kind of suspicious of you. And the good thing about having developers do the kind of marketing, I would not put it as marketing per se, but doing the awareness part of your product is that because they understand the community they are talking with in the way that they want to be spoken to, which are very important things to keep in mind when you are building a product. If it's a product for developers, your marketing team, non-technical marketing team, will have a tough time understanding what even is the product, how people can benefit from it, and how to talk to the people who actually might use it.
Absolutely. I think even taking this aspect from my own career trajectory, like building a side project just for fun or something that you're really passionate about and trying to get a user base, or even if it's a small group of people, like 10 people using a product week over week or daily, preferably, to give your feedback, to bring their friends into the platform and so on, is the way to go to learn how to market different projects, and actually build a community around something that you're truly passionate about. So even coming from this perspective as a DevRel, which is a little bit more technical than just building like a community around CrossFit or around gaming like I did as well, around NFTs, which were like all segments and parts of my own career, I feel like it's important for you to develop, like we are developing a side project now. This is just like a little spoiler, but learning how to connect with people, get feedback from them, and actually market it in a way that it's not salesy, like, hey, use my product, you will love it, I promise you will like it, but actually like, hey, here is how you can use it, how you can improve your life, how you can improve your workflow, your productivity, and so on. So you actually get to market in a more let's say, educational way than a salesy way. And I feel like that's very much into the terms of like what a DevRel does.
Exactly. You need to find the people who need your product. It's not that they might like or want your product. They need it for some reason. They needed to build a project. They needed to build a company. They needed to build their own personal brand, whatever it is. They need your product. You need to find them and you need to make them believe first that you can solve their problem in a good way. And then you can like, hey, I promise you, you will get this done. Please try it out. And then if you actually get them to try it out, it has to be great. So it's like, hey, here it is. I promise you it's going to be good. You can still now use it in your enterprise application. It will work just good. And this is, it takes a lot of steps to get there. And you can kind of get impatient in some way, or like, hey, this developer is just trying out the product, is trying to build its first hello world with it, and your team or sales team or leadership team can get a little bit pushy, like, okay, let's try to get them to buy, and you need to, hey, calm down, just let them try to do their thing, let them try it out, be successful first, because if you just try to push customers down a funnel, you won't be as successful and won't see them thrive as much as possible. And they won't be so sparked by your product as they could be like just trying out a little bit. Just let them play with it before charging or before trying to put a number behind it. So yeah.
Even from our guide that just went live this week, we have a very cool section where we mentioned show, don't tell. So this is something I really love in terms of a DevRel approach. Like instead of just trying to tell people like, hey, here's what you can do, here's how you can leverage this, here's how we can make your life better. I like an approach where a DevRel is actually so passionate about the company they're representing and working together with that they build front ends, back ends, or full stack projects with the technology they are trying to market and getting to show people or their own community and the community from the company how you can actually do it. So I truly believe in that process of show, don't tell. And this is something
It's
I
like
wanted
I
to
like this
ask you.
technology so much that I'm
Yes.
just gonna use it because this is awesome. Yeah.
How do you see actually like from a DevRel perspective in your own personal branding, especially on X, on TikTok, and even from our channels now, like our community here from Lead DevRel, how do you see that your company must be represented in your own personal brand? Like, should DevRels be talking actively about the companies they are working for? Or should they just keep occasional content, guides, and so on in their brand account? How do you see that? Do you believe like DevRel should be representing the company actively or more like as a backstage kind of role, just kind of like pushing content out?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it really, I do feel like the default, it is that you're going to be representing your company wherever you go. If you plan not to do that, then maybe be uh, straight up with that at the first interviews or something like, hey, this is, I don't like doing this. Because, with DevRel, a big part of it is developer awareness
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that if you have a social presence or if you have it could be if you speak a lot at events, if you speak a lot at it can be online events, in-person events, or other people podcasts or something like that, you will want to bring up your company in some way, just to bring that awareness with you, because kind of it's part of your job. But again, if you really are that person, like, hey, I'm a DevRel, but I work behind the scenes and I just do the technical stuff and get it pushed out, then you're gonna have to have somebody else in the company that's going to do the awareness for you, because you definitely need a face most of the time to build some trust, to build a little bit of more awareness into the content that you're putting out. If you're just putting out content, then well, it might be great for somebody who finds it, but a lot less people will find it for sure.
Absolutely. I on the other hand, I truly believe that DevRels should be actively talking about their company, unless they are hired as a. And this is kind of like mixing up developer advocates and DevRels because it's kind of like very similar roles. I just think it's kind of like a junior to senior difference. So that's kind of like how I judge it. But in my perspective, if the company is hiring someone to be in the backstage and behind the scenes kind of thing, they're hiring a dev advocate or DevRel who's focused on documentation, who's focused on technical writing, and not as a face of the
Yeah,
company kind of role.
sure. It depends on what the company needs. Like, hey, if you're a company you don't really want any awareness coming from your developer relations team, then sure. But if you're looking, which is
How
the
can you
most
be,
cases,
right? Like,
yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you are, looking for more developers to find your product, you definitely want your team to be talking actively, all of your team, especially if you're a startup, to be talking about your product, especially your DevRel team. Again, this can be quite personal, so I believe this has to be spoken into an interview or with your manager, if I mean about your preferences. But definitely, I think like you should mention it at least once in a while.
dude, I think that as
Especially
far
if you're putting out content, you need to mention your
yes,
own content. You know what I mean?
how can
So
you not mention it, right? So this was something that we discussed in the backstage before the podcast about our consultations and sessions connecting with our friends and with different companies to check on the strategies and learn from them. And I told you, and definitely want to point out here, that the head of marketing of a company that we are connected with and friends with asked us about this. Like, hey, should we enforce, like, that was literally the word used, should we enforce DevRels to publish content about what we're building, connect with the community? And I literally was like, what are you doing? What are you trying to achieve here? DevRels are literally the face of a company and the representation of a company. So if it doesn't make sense to have a DevRel team or a single DevRel that is not actively doing that and actually making strategies on how to get feedback from the community and actually build a feedback loop to the community and the company you're serving. So for me, that's kind of like almost a paradox in terms of like, why would you hire a DevRel if you're not actively doing that?
if you think about your company needs, maybe you might need someone more like a solutions engineer or something like that. That's a little bit more behind the scenes. If you think about the word advocate into developer advocate, it's really about just advocating and
Yes.
being there for your company and talking about it with developers. And if you think about the word developer relations, it's about creating relations with developers. It's really a role that's very much focused on people and showcasing your product to people, helping them out into their experience with it. So, very important thing to keep in mind. And still an active discussion in the community, so it's nice to bring up here.
Absolutely. And now, even going back to the fact of building communities, I wanted to know from your perspective, from big to smaller types of communities, why would you think, and if you have like a view of how and why smaller and more private communities, sometimes gated communities, are thriving more than those gigantic ones, the monster communities. So, what's your perspective on that?
I like this. It's definitely, if you think about communities that are really strong, a few names might come to mind, but all of them, I won't say all of them, because I don't believe that 100% anything, but I'd say most of them for sure they come from very small circles of people who actually believed something very strongly, helped each other out very much, and kindly like pushed a few people into it slowly. And the culture that people actually created initially, the first group, the culture that they created is so strong that everybody who gets into it is absolutely, you can't ignore it because, hey, this is what we are, this is how we do it. And then you get so inspired by that. So you're like, hey, I really like these people. They really love this place. They really put some effort in it. And people can know when you put a big effort in it. And I do think like those private communities, those small communities, they have a lot of that. It's like, hey, this is very exclusive because we want to preserve something that we have that is that culture that is like, hey, you're not just going to be randomly here, you're here for a reason. And in that way, you can get people that are very much passionate about being there. And that passion brings up a lot of like activeness and engagement and trying to help people with it. And what happens is with a lot of huge communities, a lot of this gets lost, and people are just trying to fight for themselves and trying for make themselves visible in a way. You know, and I'm trying to stand out, and that's the opposite that happens with a little bit more close communities. Like, no, I want to help my friends here stand out. So, or yeah, that's definitely a big reason for it.
Absolutely. And I mainly think that if you have a select group of people, and if you are kind of like gating, even if it's through a form before actually sending an invite link to someone to join a community, you're able to select much more who's actually going to provide value to that small group of people. So, for example, you can ask questions in that form, particularly like, what's your name? What do you do? What were your achievements? What are your passions, your interests, and so on? So you actually get to learn first how that person can contribute and how what type of value is that person try to extract from the community and the group of people that you're trying to build. So by joining a smaller community, first, you are much more connected and exposed to all the individuals who are part of that group. Secondly, you're able to get values from it right away. So you first understand like what's being shared, what's being discussed. You're able to contribute, and as you are like just
Get to know
facing a
people
small
like
group of people,
deeply.
yeah, you get to know people. Like
Um,
you are. It's easier for you to network, make friends, and to provide
yeah,
value and contribute to conversations as well. So I just feel like it's easier for people not to get lost in the trenches of like, okay, I don't even need to say something because there are already a lot of people, like 100 people, sharing stuff in this community, you know?
yeah. And I do think there is like a great part of it is being exclusive. I kind of like being exclusive to this. But I love this question, and I do like the way the rose kind of shaping itself for the past few years. And I would like to know for your perspective. We are seeing a lot of stuff, a lot of content around DevRel, which is quite different from the content that we used to see back in the day, a few years back, which is more like, hey, why I quit DevRel, right? And I would like to know from your end, why do you think so many people are quitting the area and with a bitter taste to it, actually?
That's a very interesting question. And I do believe it comes from the fact that not a lot of people know what they're doing in DevRel, first of all. So they think like, okay, I'm just here to create content. I'm just here,
Hot take.
uh, hot take alert, spicy notes here. But it's true. Like, if you join this field and you enter this field without knowing what a particular company is actually expecting from you, you're gonna get a shitload
Yeah,
amount of work, a lot of responsibilities, and so on. So you're gonna get
yeah.
overwhelmed and definitely or potentially burnt out. So
You won't know how to prioritize. Wow,
you won't know how to
that's a big one.
prioritize and you won't know how to set boundaries to it because you already have agreed to everything from the moment that you started interviewing with a particular company, right? So from my perspective, a lot of people are leaving DevRel with this bittersweet type of taste because of that. And secondly, not understanding what DevRel actually is and what you can do with DevRel and what kind of responsibilities are expected from you, you end up not knowing what to do. So even though DevRel is, like you said, like building relationships with developers, there are a lot of metrics, a lot of campaigns, and much more work than just talking to people in a daily basis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's even because DevRel is so tricky because there's so many things you need to be good at. And it can be very overwhelming for people when they first join because usually companies are trying to look for that golden egg, which is that person that can do everything. But the truth is, it takes a lot of time for you to get really good at that role, and this is a very long career path if you're really thinking about it. And most people don't even start with developer relations. They go to like software engineering, and then they go to a more leadership position. They build this whole different path, and then end up in that role because they maybe also work a little bit with marketing. And if you think about that, those people are getting into those positions much more well armed with the resources they need to succeed in. Just basically a person that is dragged into it and is just starting out their careers.
Absolutely. Don't you think that people who are actually good, I'll not say good, I'll say great at multitasking and who are marketing generalists, together with being somewhat proficient as a developer or coder or whatever it is, do better as DevRels because they are able to actually take on the amount of responsibilities that we are supposed to take?
Yeah, I think they're better at the awareness part of DevRel for sure. Being a marketing expert absolutely helps with also that dev content. I also think that if you're like a developer expert and have a little bit of background in marketing, you can also make a great DevRel. It has room for everybody, but you're gonna be working on different aspects of the product. For example, if you really want your developers to have a great experience after they are in that middle ground. But after the first hello world with the product and before applying it to enterprise level, like this is where you're going to need a very technical, deep expertise to actually go deep into it and be able to do the code changes necessary along with all developer experience knowledge that you have. But if you're looking to like, hey, how do I build a community around it and how do I make people feel engaged with events and how do I create different things to entertain developers. Having that marketing mindset also is going to do you great, and you're going to be working on something a bit different or a lot different, but it's also that role in this area just encompasses so much that it's just has room for all of these folks.
Now, talking about having room for all of the folks joining a particular community or getting awareness, getting in touch with a company's tech stack, what is the best way, from your perspective, to understand your company's objectives and set a workflow around it to actually achieve those metrics? Because, okay, sharing a little bit more of context to this,
All
I did
right.
talk to a few DevRels throughout the past couple of weeks, and a couple of people are like, hey, it's very hard to measure activities as a DevRel. Not everything can be quantified. I understand that, even coming from an events perspective, meetups, workshops, bootcamps, and so on. But you still need to track and understand how the relationships that you're building with the developer community are actually growing or evolving over time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so tricky. That part is so tricky and involves so many variables. I think first thing you can do here to help you out is having a clear goal in mind. If your goal is every goal, then you don't have a goal. You know what I mean? So, hey, I'm tracking how many developers are using, how many likes on Twitter account, how many people are going through the docs, and how many. You're just going to get so lost, because you're going to probably have many different initiatives. And you're going to probably have results that are not trackable or are trackable in very ways that you were not predicting even, and you maybe not even tracking all of the results, which is what happens in most cases.
Yes.
So have clear goals in mind and do your campaigns or your projects in order to achieve those goals. And make sure that you are very clear about that to your company. You know, if your company has one goal and you say, hey, I'm going to work with this, and this is going to be what my activities will be about, and your company says, okay, but can you also do this and this and this and this? Then you're going to have to be like, I can, but you cannot expect me to actually bring results out of this because this is not exactly what I had planned for this goal. And we're gonna have to be make our priorities here. What do we want? Do we want to do this and this and this and not get to our goal, or do we want to get to our goal? You know what I mean? So being a DevRel is a lot of that, and it's also about advocating for yourself, your work inside the company, ideas that you truly believe in. You need to be able to make friends inside the company and be kind of sketchy about it. And then try to use these people to make sure that your ideas come to be because you truly believe in them, and try to advocate for yourself, your ideas, and the things that you believe is going to work for that, and try to please focus on one thing at a time or a couple of things at a time, because it can be so frustrating when you are doing so many different things and you're not being able to actually gather the result of each one of them because it's just too spread out.
I agree. Coming from different teams that have heavy marketing backgrounds, and especially like I myself worked either in correlation, like as a DevRel overall, you work either under the product department, the marketing department, or the engineering department. Overall, as a North Star metric for most companies that do hire DevRels, they're looking to increase developer adoption. So that's like 99% of the companies who actually have a DevRel team. So trying to get more applications being built on top of a particular tech stack. From my perspective, in using the company I worked previously as an example, I sat together with the head of marketing a whole campaign around IFLATAM, which was an event that happened in Buenos Aires last year. And we had a couple different metrics around that event. So first of all, we were measuring how many people we connected in a daily basis, how many people scanned our QR codes during the event days, how many relationships we were building with different protocols and different companies throughout that event as well. So we could have a clear understanding and actually have a feedback loop around what was being built and what was generating interest from developers and teams building with LivePeer, and what was actually being a downside or a pain point to actually convince or educate those developers and teams on how they could actually leverage LivePeer, understand the technology and what we were trying to do. So I do understand, like, have a clear goal, and I agree with you 100% there. And under that clear goal, or a set of a few clear goals or KPIs that you need to measure and actually provide feedback and metrics to your company in a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, you also need to have like those supporting metrics and KPIs to have that feedback loop formed around what we are building to improve on your documentation, your events, your hackathons, and so on. So I love that perspective.
Love it. And this brings us to a question I was waiting to ask you, which is, how do I actually understand my company's objectives and how do I prepare for it?
So from my end, what I usually do, I communicate first with the team or department that I'm actually working together with. So whether that's the engineering team or the marketing team, right now I'm leading the marketing team for the company I'm working for. So I need to set a goal as the lead of the team, understanding what is the North Star metric from that company. From LivePeer, as an example, I had one clear goal, which was measuring the developer adoption of our technology and how many applications were being built over time. So we got to understand first our starting point, and subsequently which events we needed to set up and establish to actually achieve those goals, and also understand which campaigns were doing well, were not doing well, were evolving, and how we could iterate to make it even better or actually make it good. And
Exactly.
from there, we could set up different goals and objectives from our own team's perspective around what we needed to provide. For example, in our case, we wanted to understand how our educational guides were doing, how our social content was doing, how was the impression and perspective or assumptions from different developer teams based on the case studies that we were publishing. So that was like a week-to-week work that we tried to develop so we could get and achieve an impact, actually, the North Star goal directly. So first of all, communicate with your team, communicate with the founders, so you can actually understand where the company is trying to go or what is the main objective from the company, right?
It's important also that you mentioned, like, not all of your ideas are going to work. You might have an idea like, hey, I think this is going to absolutely drive developer adoption 100%. And then you're just there and it's like, yeah, this is not really the case. And trying to figure it out why that's not the case, but also try to think of something else that's going to actually help you get there, and try to experiment until you actually get a result. Don't get stuck in doing the same thing over and over. It's not working, but I'm just going to try harder. And that's probably going to get you quite frustrated. And there's probably a bigger reason why that's not happening in the way that you expect. And you should also look deep into it, but not being stuck into one way of doing things. This is why we vary a lot into our initiatives, events, maybe, blogging content, maybe video content, and try to see what sticks. But after you actually find what sticks, then do more and do more, and not do more of what's not actually working for you.
That's why, like, DevRel, it's almost perceived at times as a growth marketeer, right? Because oftentimes you are running a lot of experiments, seeing what works, gathering metrics and details based on those experiments, so you can later on either drop and ditch that experiment completely or keep iterating on it to make it better over time.
Exactly. You can have like an initiative that, hey, this is getting super popular on perhaps LinkedIn, and it's getting me a lot of LinkedIn likes every time we do this for the company, but it's not actually driving any clients. And, every time we do this YouTube video type, whatever, it actually like 10 people sign up, and but it's like 10 people compared to, I don't know, 200 people liking our posts on LinkedIn for this other campaign. But our objective is to have people sign up. What should I do? And just try to balance things out, try to see what makes sense for your company, and more importantly, try to save your resources and efforts on things that are not what you're looking for, even though they look very good. This is so tempting and so important.
Absolutely. Now, thinking, we just spoke about objectives, goals, North Star metrics. Now, moving to your workflow as a DevRel, what are the tools that you use on a daily basis to keep track of your work, to keep being productive, and actually make progress?
I love it. Yeah, a lot of my work is, obviously, I open Ocean every single day. I keep track of almost everything there, and try. It's what helps me not get lost in any way to my multi activities. I also love Loom for video recording. Is one of the best out there, to be honest. Um, Typefully for my tweets. I really like that. And let me try to see it. Some other tools like Google Spreadsheets and Google Docs, the traditional ones. The script for video recording sometimes. This is not a promo, guys, just to be clear. We're just talking what we use daily. And GPT-4, actually. Really good one there. I might be forgetting some of them, but those are definitely the ones that I use more regularly.
Nice. Yeah, from my end, you already know it, but I love Notion way too much. Actually, as an alternative to Google Sheets or spreadsheets, whatever, I do like to point out Airtable. a little bit more here, because you can build so many cool integrations with Airtable and Zapier, either coming directly from forms and also linking it to email newsletters and so on. So kind of like building automations. And even if you are building your own side projects as a DevRel and learning how to build a community, you can even build no-code applications, either with Glide, Webflow, Framer, and link Airtable and Zapier to actually build really cool MVPs for your community or whatever you're trying to build there, or whatever platform you're trying to build there as well. You can even build platforms with Glide app together with Notion, Airtable, and all of those cool platforms that I just mentioned. Now, talking about the communications basis, I love using Discord. I know a lot of people still are stuck on Slack, and I'm not super fond of Slack. I actually do love Discord way more. I think it's just like a little bit more casual, like, okay, we're doing something together and we're having fun with this, and not so corporate, you know? And
Slack has its ways
dude,
to
I
traumatize
can't.
people.
Yes.
That sound, Jesus.
Yes.
You know the one I'm talking about.
Too good. And writing blog posts and creating cool visuals or educational guides. Sure. I love using Figma for visuals, infographics, and whatever kind of thing I need to create, kind of like as a designer or attempt to be a designer. And as you know, publish all my blog posts great. On Hashnode, and now we're also using Substack for our guides and weekly newsletter for Lead DevRel. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet, it's leaddevrel.com. And now talking about gear, one piece of gear that I've been dying to try out, it's not yet part of my workflow, but I would love to be. I don't know if you heard about Opal camera. Like everyone, I've seen like a huge announcement around this on whenever it was launched. Let me get this for you, but everyone was talking about it. Everyone was tweeting. We should do a blog post about a tech stack. We should. I actually got the actual DevRel tech stack. I actually got a request for us to do this, but yes. So, Opal, this camera. Look at the tiny size of that thing, and just for whatever, from what I know, good? So small. Yes, from what I know, it has impeccable video quality, especially for live streams, video calls, and so on. So it seems to be really, really cool. Look at that thing. Wow. Can you click the picture? Look at this. I just didn't know. Look at that. It looks sick. It's really good. I'm crazy to get one of this. Look at the size of that thing. Good. Like, come on. How expensive is it? So, dying to get one of this, and looking forward to actually. What's the price currently? I think it's $200. Really? $200. Not the cheapest thing in the world, but it seems to be absolutely worth it. Good. Yeah. Together with that's a really awesome branding for this camp. So big fan. This would be again, nothing here is sponsored, guys, but if you want to, we are totally open to it. Let's send this video to them. I love it. And I think we're coming to our close, right, Dani? Hell yeah. I mean, we can talk for hours, you know that, but guys, we're gonna save our talking for another episode. So we plan to be releasing these episodes week over week. I believe every week on which day of the week? Maybe Fridays or Saturdays. So people actually have some fun time over the weekend. I think we're going to be deciding this after today probably, but expect this podcast weekly. We're going to have a lot of fun here. At least I am for sure. I love talking about it. Oh, I hate it. You could be here for 5 hours straight, Dani. You wouldn't get tired of it. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode, the news on the tech space, DevRel space.
See you guys then.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet to our podcast and our newsletter, go to leaddevrel.com and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. So feel free to DM us or mention Lead DevRel and let us know what you think. Thank you for tuning in.